Hi, everybody, and welcome to Adobe Live. We're coming to you live from the land of the Dharawal people, and I'm very excited to be here to continue on our poster project in Photoshop with Illustrator from Sydney, Australia, Jeremy Lord. Hey, Jeremy, what's up?
Hey, how's it going? Good to be
I'm
back.
I'm good. I noticed that your face looks different from
Yeah.
yesterday. Can you tell us about this upgrade?
Upgrade or downgrade? I'm not sure. Just, age has happened and yeah, I've got glasses now to
Yeah,
see life in 4K, which is nice.
yeah.
But yeah, my pride is just to taken like a 5% damage hit.
Really? Wow.
Ah, no,
Okay.
not really,
Plus
not
five
really.
to perception, minus five to reputation.
Yep.
No, I love
Yeah.
wearing a good pair of glasses. It's more opportunities to accessorize, and I think they look great. So there you go.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, very very good. And it reminded me that I haven't worn my spectacles, like glasses, and for so long that I don't know where they are.
Mm.
But my all of my sunglasses are prescription,
Are
and
they?
so
Right.
like if I drive, I'm the opposite. If I drive, I have to wear my glasses, or everything's just blurry until it's too late. So yeah, but I don't know where my spectacles are. I need to find them. Anyway, that's a job for me later. Our job today is to do our final live stream of this
Yeah.
poster project. It's a massive undertaking that you've done, so don't expect it to be pixel perfect at the end of today, but we'll kind of wrap it up as well. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I'll let you kind of jump in from there. This is our fifth live stream on this one. You
Hmm.
can go back to the start and check out some of this pixel stuff, folks. If you're live in chat, shout out. I'm just making sure that chat on Behance is open. It was having some issues earlier today. It looks like it is. Johanna's in there looking after us as well. Welcome back, Johanna. But yeah, I'll let you kind of pick up from there, Jeremy.
Sweet. Yeah. So, um, like you said, this is part 5 of the stream, and we've just kind of been like slowly building up to this. I've gone in and added some things from yesterday's stream, and obviously kind of tried to like finish the line work so that we could focus in on color today, which is exactly what we're going to do. And then we'll finalize this and make it into like a printable poster. As you can see, this is very, very wee. So we're going to make this a little bit bigger and make it actually usable as a printed element in here.
Nice.
So with that in mind, let's get into it. So I've got this palette. I spoke about this yesterday a little bit. It's just 4 colors, and they're shades of gray. And it looks like this one is a black, but it's actually only like a 10% to black. So it's not quite all the way down to that.
Mm.
Because I'm actually going to cheat a little bit and use my outlines, which are full 100% black, where this one is only 90%, to kind of use as a 5th color, if you will.
Right.
And that's just going to give me a little bit of like, again, this kind of stylistic approach where I can have some outlines. The reason I do this is it's a bit of a no-brainer. I can just start applying colors without having to think too much about where things are. And it's also going to mean I'm going to work in values and tones of light and dark, not having to worry about like, does the green match with the blue, or can I not see it? As long as you like, and it's probably a tip for anybody kind of painting or any that kind of stuff digitally that you're doing, not just pixel art. If you're kind of struggling with colors, work in black and white first, get the lights and the volumes correct, and then you can apply some colors. And there's heaps and heaps of tutorials online on how to do exactly what I'm about to do here, which is work in a grayscale, apply a gradient map on top of it to edit those colors and kind of work to that. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going
Nice.
to start with a light source. So I'm going to say probably what's going to be best is, let's go with a light source coming from over here.
From the
So
croissant.
it's like from the croissant, yeah. So it's like animators do this thing where it's just like this like 3D arrow, if you will, where you can kind of see, where the direction of the light is kind of coming from. So we're going to do this one, and we're just going to kind of cast shadows across that. It's a good thing to kind of have a little bit of a pause before you get into this and think like, what's going to make the most sense for me to kind of put in these, where can I put this light source, and what's going to work best. And because I'm working on this kind of isometric angle, it's going to either be from like the back left or the back right. Anything else might kind of start to get a little bit kind of funky. I could potentially also do a light source coming from down here. That could work.
Oh yeah, so it's like sunset kind of thing. Like, is that what you would be thinking of, or sunrise?
Like it, and so like cast shadows would kind of happen, like over here and stuff. So like that could totally be something. But I'm gonna stick to this. I'm gonna stick to my guns and see what kind of happens if I come in from there. And so we're gonna get straight into this, and I'm gonna pick this particular color, just this gray here. And what I like to do actually, whenever I'm kind of painting like this, is I like to lay down a base kind of layer, if you will, and fill the entire painting with that particular color. And then that's just going to make my life a lot easier moving forward. So let's just go ahead and kind of do that real quick. I could, by the way, probably do this because I'm using pixel art. If you are feeling pretty brave, you can actually do this where I'm going to smash all my line work together into one layer. And because I'm using the pencil brush, not the actual brush, the regular paintbrush, because I'm using pixel art, I can actually come in with my paint bucket. And this is going to actually act a little bit like Illustrator. And I can just drop colors straight into there. And it's always going to be super clean and neat.
Right.
Because I'm using the pencil brush, I'm never going to get this kind of like shadow element that you can sometimes get whenever you're using the paint bucket inside. So that is something that you could absolutely do just real quick, smack in some colors like this and not have to mess around with it. But then you've got your line work and your colors on the same layer. And it can be a little bit risky going down the track if you want to kind of do some edits. Not the end of the world, but like I said, if you're feeling brave, you can go for that technique. Otherwise, I'm just going to do this on a separate layer.
Could you do that technique and like make a copy and do that technique and kind of do like, I don't know, your shadows, your highlights or something on different layers and like reference it in some way? Or no? Or am I talking crazy?
No, actually that makes sense. I've actually never thought of that. Thank you for the idea. What we're going to do is we're going to do exactly that. But I'm going to use a paint bucket and I'm going to fill all these areas like so. Do this real quick.
That's exactly the sound that I have in my head too.
Yeah, 100%. You gotta like punctuate your work with sound effects. Otherwise, how do you know you're really doing your work?
Yeah, what are we doing here, honestly, if we're not making sound effects?
Exactly. So what I could do here, just like that, is once that's done, again, because I'm using pixel art and because I'm kind of got everything on anti-alias up here, I can actually just then use my magic wand tool, go select similar,
right,
and then Command Shift J to rip that out of there and put it on its own layer. And then I've got all my colors on a separate layer. That makes heaps more sense to do it this way.
There we go. Now we're caving.
Yeah. That teamwork.
Teamwork.
For the win.
Nice.
So let's go and fill this all kind of in there. And the reason I'm doing this again is so that like I can have something that's going to be a lot more usable. I'm basically doing legwork for me later on.
Right.
That I won't have to repeat every single time. There's different ways of doing this. And like, some people like to do this just with a layer mask and just kind of do the same thing. It's all, whoops, I've got I've got a little missing pixel over here that has let all my gray escape. No good. There we go.
It's like the lake was leaking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the river just it got out. So yeah, so this is much faster. The other way that I would have done it basically is just like you paint a kind of a circle and then you use your paint bucket tool to fill that circle inside. That's what I was going to do, but your way is smarter and takes less time.
There you go. I noticed something. I think you've done it twice, and you notice as well where you've accidentally colored in one of the, because you're on the same layer. If you click on even a single pixel, it'll turn color. That color, which is interesting. So it's an extra
it can actually be quite handy because like basically, and this is where we were talking about this yesterday in the stream. Oh man,
that's going to be tedious.
Okay, I have a way around this. I'm just going to put that on a separate layer, and then I can just do this and not worry about it. And then when I merge these layers back out together, I can smash those two layers together and everything will be just fine. And in fact, I'm going to do the same thing to my building here because otherwise that's going to be a nightmare to do as well. So I'm just going to do a little bit of a cheat and do all of that. And train, you get to, whoops. All right, and then on the separate layer, I can come in with a massive brush and then fill all of these bits in and get all those little teeny pixels that are hidden that didn't get grabbed, like so.
It's the coloring in for adults.
It is, yeah. Bang.
Yeah, Johanna, I imagine you could also duplicate the line work and have it on top.
You could absolutely do that. As always, like we talk about this quite often whenever we're doing streams, but it's so many different ways to do the same thing in Photoshop, which just kind of means, you know, there's technically no right or wrong. You do whatever is kind of easiest for you. But yeah, there we go. Now we've got these two. I'm going to call this layer base. And then we've got that plus this. Right. It doesn't really matter that all the outlines are in here because, again, there's never going to be a case where that's going to bleed into other stuff. But the reason why that's kind of a nice thing to do for me is that now I can actually use this base. And because I'm doing pixel art, I don't really have to separate my colors on different layers, which is absolutely something that I would do normally, which is like the lights and darks would be on different colors and like the trees would be on different layers and like just so I can edit those later on. But because it's so easy to make selections when you're using pixel art, you don't really have to worry about that too much. And also because I'm using 4 colors, if I change one color, I want to be able to select all those other colors. So the magic wand and select similar is going to come in really handy with that so that I make sure that like if I change one of those colors, it changes it in every instance of that color. So I'm actually going to lock this layer, and I can do this by clicking on the little kind of checkerboard up here or by hitting / and it just does it anyways. So that locks the layer's transparency, which means if I come in with like a different color and start kind of painting over here, you'll see it's not actually doing anything. As soon as I go into my drawing, it paints that. So yeah, it just means that like I'm not going to have to worry about going outside the lines or anything when I'm painting. I don't have to be as careful. I've done the work once. I don't have to do it again.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like secret sauce, I think, for digital art in Photoshop. Like I feel like it's the I don't know, the foundations of it, you know, like it's such a revelation whether you're doing pixel art and I know that you do a similar technique, like with when you're doing your shadows and highlights or your color, like when you're doing your kind of more traditional digital artwork as well. Like it's I think it's a bit of a revelation for people that don't know that you can do that. Like you can do it in that way. But as you said, you've done the work, you've done all the groundwork, you've done all the foundations, and then now it's like time to get creative, and you can kind of do it almost idiot proof. Like you can kind of be a bit more playful with it because you've already put in the pixels, you've put in the work.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Like you make the selection once, and then like maybe you can save the selection if you're really kind of worried about it, and just there's no point in trying to do something and then like you have to do the selection a bunch of times. Every time you want to make the change, you need to reselect the thing. It's not really much point. The other thing that I was saying is a lot of people will do this where they'll then select all of this and pop a layer mask on top of everything, which does effectively the same thing. It's just when you hide the layer mask, those things will get shown. So and it also adds a little bit of weight to your file, having like, layer masks upon layer masks and effects and all that kind of stuff. So locking transparency, I find, is probably just, for me at any rate, is the easiest, smoothest way to do all of that. And I've missed a little rogue pixel down here. All right, so now what I'm doing is I'm just working in the kind of the slightly darker, but not full kind of darker tones. And just making sure that like, everything makes sense from the light source that I chose, which is over in that corner up there, coming like down. So all of these things are getting that kind of treatment and that shadow there. And that's going to really start to kind of showcase the volumes and where things go and how it all works, which is what kind of lighting should be doing. It should be just kind of showcasing exactly that and giving people a good hint of like, where are the volumes, how does it work, what am I looking at, what's in front of what, and so on and so forth. So yeah,
it's cool.
And
for those joining us as well, like what's going on? What are you guys doing? Pixel art in Photoshop. Yes, it is possible. So if you're just joining us, we're here with Jeremy Lord. We're at the end of our live stream series for this one with Jeremy. So if you want to learn how to kind of set, I know I said this before for people that early joined us, but if you want to set your Photoshop file up to be able to do pixel art in this way, there are a couple of key settings. So you have to go back to that first episode, which is on the YouTube channel, and check that out and just follow the steps that Jeremy has laid out. And then you too can use Photoshop to create pixel art.
Yeah. And yeah, it is absolutely possible. I think not only is it possible, but it's 100% recommended.
Yeah.
To do your pixel art in Photoshop. There's a bunch of other programs that will kind of let you do it, but I just, it's so easy to do this in Photoshop.
And it's also one of those things, if you're used to Photoshop as well and how it works in other, like, anyway, like the more familiar you are with Photoshop, then doing it in something that you're already familiar with is always useful.
And you're already in the program, but you're going to be using it for other things, right? Like when you go like, we're going to add some type to this, like you're already in that ecosystem. So it just makes sense, I think, to do it in this way. And as you can see, like it's super easy. Now, because I'm working all on the same layer, I have to resist the urge, like if I stuff up, to erase, because then I'm actually erasing my thing. Right. I have to paint everything with this technique. So it's a little bit of just like, got to keep your reflexes in line. But yeah, it's super kind of still really nice to do this. And I'm usually using a ton of layers in my artworks. And so doing this kind of thing where I'm painting everything on the same layer is actually quite like refreshing in a way.
Yeah, I get that. I think we were talking about it a little bit yesterday about like kind of like just doing a different sort of methodical kind of approach to things can sometimes be quite refreshing.
Yeah. it's like going back to like vanilla, right?
Right.
It's like you're you're just like, yeah, you're just playing the thing without any of the fancy things that you're used to kind of using. And it can be quite nice to
Mm.
just go back to the like core experience of what it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you should be able to kind of see now how this is all going to come together and what's it doing and what's, how's it all working. And it's even just like that little bit of extra kind of lighting there. In theory, I could also be doing this exactly what you were kind of talking about. I could be doing this on my outlines layer, and working in that way to kind of create these, and then use the paint bucket tool to do this a little bit faster. Could totally do that. But yeah, again, there's also like, we've said this before, but speed is not necessarily always the be all end all of digital art. Like if you're working to a deadline, of course, like you want to be able to, smash out some things pretty quickly in a way that's going to be consistent and let you, fulfill your deadline duties. But sometimes you're just doing it for yourself and like you just want to have a little bit of fun.
Yeah. And there's something around like the methodical like way of doing it as well, right?
Yeah.
Like kind of, and being super close and then noticing if, you're kind of doing it piece by piece, like a waterfall kind of approach to doing it. Whereas, yeah, I think because it's like sometimes when something is really boring, let me go back. I get this with writing a lot. So there's so many different ways to like type, and I can type. I type a lot of emails. I've been typing my whole life. I've gotten pretty quick at it. But so often I'll be writing something and then you could kind of go back, copy this thing and then put it at the front and then copy that bit and, to move things around when you're trying to make something grammatically correct. Mm-hmm. But so often these days, even though I know it would save me a couple of seconds each time I do that, so often I just delete the whole sentence and I retype it just because I want to get back into the flow and really think about like it creatively. Like I read it and I go, that's not quite right. That's not what I meant. It's a little bit too soft, or it's a little bit too hard, or, it's a little bit too formal or casual for the audience, whatever, whoever's going to read it. And so like I may rewrite it, but yeah, I've already written most of the words, like 80% of the words are already in that sentence or paragraph. And I know that I could copy and paste to move things around, but I'll often just delete it and go, let's write that again with that in mind. And it might not be exactly the same. So I think there's something about going through the process, like here, of actually using your stylus, like drawing the shadow, even though you could probably get the pen tool and bring it to the top left to the bottom right and go, now it's a perfect angle, or, the painting thing. So yeah, something in there I can't quite articulate, but there's something about that process I think is cool.
100%. Like yeah, and I think it's nice to acknowledge that and just kind of go with it.
Yeah. Go with the flow.
Yeah, everything doesn't have to be like performance and efficiency based.
Yeah.
All right. And see what happens. Yeah, cool. That's working.
Anyway, let's use the marquee call to knock this side of the building out real quick.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we do have a bit of a deadline on the stream. It's not all just fun and games, but that kind of idea still kind of holds for sure, where it's just like, yeah, well, maybe you just enjoy doing it that way more, and so
yeah,
just do that. All right. I might move this on a little bit and just do this a little bit more roughly going forward, just so I can kind of start getting into some of the actual kind of groundwork and shading work to show you guys how all of this is going to work going forward. Because at the moment, like you can start to see the lighting and everything, but it's obviously quite dull. All of it's just like black and white and grayscale. It's a little bit kind of like, yeah, it's not very appealing.
Yeah, I didn't realize Paris was just grey.
Yeah, well, it certainly is in winter. It is for sure.
I just feel like this is how it is.
All right, so I'm literally just like smacking down just big areas of lighting and stuff, not kind of worrying too much about how it all ends up looking. Pretty good. And then we can come in with a darker tone still and do those areas are going to be like extra kind of dark. So like bits like the bottom part of this kind of tunnel where the metro is going into it.
Right.
Or underneath these areas, they're like the bits that are like in the shade. And then they're also casting their own kind of shadow, right? So all these kinds of like little bits and pieces here, the underside of this train, and maybe there's even just kind of like a cast shadow from the tunnel onto it, and it's casting its own shadow there. Some of this stuff, a little bit more kind of detail underneath this tree, all these kind of types of things that are going to really highlight what it is that we're kind of talking about.
Yeah, it really starts kind of coming together with the extra.
It does, shadow. Yeah. I always love kind of working in the shading phase of a piece because it really just you start to see so much more kind of like volume and expression, and it starts to really come together in a much kind of clearer way. Yeah. So yeah, so again, all these kind of like intermediary bits that are kind of casting shadows in here. We can kind of cheat a little bit and just add little bits and pieces here and there. And then we're going to come in with a lighter tone. And this is where I think it really starts to kind of to pop out when we start adding in these highlights, is when everything kind of comes to life a little bit more. So we got a bit of a highlight over here, kind of hitting the top of this building, up there. Yeah, eventually on these clouds over here. These ledges on the Eiffel Tower, all of this stuff. Again, I'm doing this very roughly now in the interest of time. For a second, I got a panic attack. I was like, whoa, we only got like 5 minutes left. We don't.
Oh, we got a bit more time than that.
Yeah. Oops.
Yeah, the trees are looking quite fluffy.
Yeah, and like we can start to add in some texture as well, like some like kind of like foliage stuff with this technique, and just, you know, get a little bit more of like a blend of colors and just make them feel not quite so just flat and amorphous. And really use the highlights here to just kind of pick things up off of the background that they might be in front of, and really make them kind of stand out in front of them. So all of a sudden these light posts are no longer just kind of lost in this, you know, madness of everything that's around them.
Bread's definitely making me hungry.
I got a little loaf of cheese in there, a little loaf of cheese, a little
Loaf of
block of
cheese.
cheese, block of cheese, a little croissant in there. Definitely getting some hungers going on in there. Get this pedestrian crossing happening too. And we can cheat a little bit with some of the things that don't necessarily make sense. So these windows don't necessarily need to be so dark. They can just be a little bit of mid-tone. And so this is what I'm talking about as well with this kind of like four tone kind of thing is like I've because I've limited my choices, I don't have as many decisions to make when it comes to stuff like this. Like, all right, I want to change the color of these windows. What could they be? Well, they can't be this gray, and they probably shouldn't be the white because that's saved for the highlights. So then you want them to be lighter, so it's just going to be this one, and that's it. And you like that's what you're going to have to do. And you know, sometimes it plays against you, but in most cases, it just means that you're not kind of sitting there going like, "What about this color? What about this color?" Which is can be fun sometimes, but often just kind of is also a massive, massive time sink. And I'm also going to cheat a little bit here and use my tones for something else than just tonal values and actually add some color to this awning with those kind of tones.
Yeah.
Because that's really going to also kind of pick this up. And I can use a little bit of lighting in here to show some kind of reflection in the glass here to show that this is all of a glass panel. I can bring this tone back into this little like street sign and then pretend like there's a little bit of type happening inside of it, whatever.
Yeah.
That's pixel art type, by the way, just these like 6 pixels that are
Right.
having a little bit of a battle. But again, from a distance, it'll read just fine. And that's what kind of really matters most. And then I said also last stream yesterday that I was going to put a little poster here. So let's stick that in there as well. And this is where potentially you might also start to see some issues because you're using this kind of lightest color that I've created as a info for like, this is light. And now I'm using it for a poster, which is not light, but is actual just color. And so there can be some potential kind of confusion that can happen with that. But once I start kind of putting in a little bit more kind of tonal values in here, it might start to make a little bit more sense.
Right. I'm just waiting for you to do a perfect pixel art rendition of La Chat Noir. Let's see it.
Yeah. Yes, using like 10 pixels.
10 pixels. Yeah. Super easy.
Nice.
Super easy.
Let's do it. Let's put a little cat in here.
It's like the only French like poster I could really think of that's super famous.
And a head. Whoa. And some ears. This cat's looking real
That's
evil.
Good, man. That's heaps good.
As it probably should. Okay. And then we're going to put in some type. The type's going to be real kind of. Well,
I'd recognize this. Like, you know how like you have the Tokyo stuff and it's got like a neon sign like that.
Yeah.
Like that's
work.
it.
It'll work.
It works.
That'll do, donkey. That'll do. All right, cool. So yeah, so we brought some life into this a little bit and just kind of worked it all up to give it some kind of hint of highlights and kind of volume working into this. And you can already see like this is just working already so much better than if it was just all that kind of flat tones. And so now this is where I think the kind of the fun part of all this kind of starts to kick in, which is when I can take this and put a gradient map on top of it and just get the shadow over the cheese in there as well. I feel like that should be the name of like some weird like Nintendo Switch video game, Shadow of the Cheese.
Shadow of the Cheese.
Yeah.
It's an amazing name for
the new
retro
Zelda
game.
video game. Breath of the Wild, Shadow of the Cheese.
What type of game would Shadow of the Cheese be? Like Shadow of the Colossus? Like, would it be like a
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
yeah?
something like that.
Axel, pardon me, in chat was saying that's so clever. Working in grayscale before adding color helps create a nice contrast. Great job.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly the point, right? Is like you're doing this to make sure that everything works from a volumetric perspective and that your artwork kind of makes sense. I always kind of feel like it's that, you know, that saying of like, it's New York. If you make it here, you can make it anywhere.
Right.
Like I think it's that. It's like if your artwork works in black and white, it'll work in color.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Because the volume makes sense because like the shapes all kind of line up and everything. And so there's never going to be any issues with kind of working this way. And like I said, the main thing is just like it takes away the headache of like what color do I put here, and you can just get straight into all of this. Like so. All right, now let's put in the fun bit. I'm going to put on top of my line work. Oops, all right. On top of my line work, that can just go way up there. And my colors, I'm going to go into my panel down here and I'm going to go to a gradient map.
Oh, can you do that again? I have our cameras in the bottom right on my camera, and I was just covering it, and I think it's a really important step. I don't want someone to be watching this on replay just being like, cool, that dude's head was in the way. So down the bottom right.
So this one down here.
That's it.
I don't know if that's zooming in.
Yeah, it's zooming. That's great. Perfect.
So that it's just basically like create a new fill or adjustment layer. So this is all non-destructive. And when you pop this out, you actually end up getting a very similar menu to, if you go up here to adjustments, you get a lot of these happening here. You get basically the same thing down here. And the one we're after is the second one from the bottom, which is this gradient map. And it will do this. It'll open up your properties. It'll stick a new layer on top of that. And what we're looking at is this. So I've made a few custom ones in here. But this is where you can then start to mess around with kind of editing color. So I'm going to do this and pop that in there. And that's pretty cool. Like I really kind of like those colors. It's quite unexpected.
Yeah.
And so how a gradient map works basically is I'll show you. I'm going to get rid of all of this stuff. And I'm going to go with like, let's say I'm going to go with like a blue to yellow or orange, let's say. Like that. Actually, I might just swap these around in terms of place, right? So there we go.
Wow.
So what we're looking at is basically we've got a grayscale image. And if you can imagine a grayscale here, right? So if we pop in a black and then a white here, our image is basically identical. It's a little bit darker than what we had because we didn't use full black on the shading. We only used the 90% black, right?
Yeah.
But effectively, the image is the same. So what you're doing with a gradient map is you're telling Photoshop everything that's on the black side of things, make it orange. And then everything that's on the white side of my grayscale, of my gradient, make it this color, green.
Yeah.
And then everything in the middle is just going to be declinations of that, right? So let me take this, and you can see my palette here is unaffected, right? I still have exactly the colors that I use. If I take this and pop it on top of my color, on my palettes, you'll see that that's now applying to those things. Those grays are now matching their spot on the gradient of like black to white is being matched by the gradient map. And so what's really cool about that, I'm going to take that back into here, is that I can say to it, just go to town and like show me what you got with these kind of gradient maps that I've
Yeah.
created, right? So that's one that I created. That's quite cool. Like I wouldn't necessarily think to do this where it's like the lights are warm, but the shadows are a little bit cooler. There's a nice kind of like, it's like 6 p.m. vibe to this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, so I could try something like that, make it a little bit warmer, a little bit more kind of like modern and fluoro, something a little bit different. It's really kind of fun to just like drop these colors in really, really fast and very kind of efficiently like this. And then also be able to edit them. So let's say I take this one and I like the blues here, but the yellow isn't really doing it for me. So I'm going to click on that. And then I can say, actually, I want you to be a different color. I want you to be like more of an orange,
Yeah.
or I want you to be brighter. So let's go with a white. And then we get this kind of weird tone. You can shuffle these around. This gets a little bit more advanced, right? Like you're moving the pink here, which is not as visible. If you move it over, you'll start to see it a little bit more in the artwork because you're moving its place on the gradient. It all gets a little bit technical, but the main thing you need to remember of how this is working is it's going from black to white, and you're replacing those positions on that grayscale with different colors that'll match those tones, which is, again, all this is non-destructive. So I've actually haven't changed any of the colors of my actual artwork. I've just done it like this. So I can come back in and click on this and say, actually, you know what? I did like it better with the yellow instead of the white. So I'm going to do that. And it changes every instance of that color, which also brings back this thing of like, that's why it's important for me to work on one single layer so that if I decide to change one of these tones, they'll all change accordingly.
It's magic.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Totally. It's so good. Like it does make sense. Like it's basically with the grayscale, you've created a spectrum, and then the gradient map is kind of telling Photoshop what to create, what to do with those pixels on that spectrum. Yeah. It's incredible. Like it's such especially, I know we've spoken about this with other bits of artwork, but especially when the client comes back and says, oh, Jeremy, I'm really sorry, but we want them to be our brand colors now. Or the client wants this with, a different kind of color set, or we want to print it now, or we want it to be a poster now, or we want to do it screen print on shirts, but we can only really afford 2 colors.
Yeah.
You can go, okay, that's not the end of the world. I've actually got a really quick solution for that.
That's exactly right. And it's just, I really like working this way because it's flexible, because it also shows you color schemes that you might not have thought of.
Right.
Well, and like color pairings that are like, hey, that kind of works. I quite like it. And then you edit it. Like I said, there's just like this technique of kind of coloring in on a grayscale with a gradient map is just doing the rounds on all the YouTube tutorials that are like, here's how to color more smartly, is like this. So I'm not saying that, obviously this isn't like I started this and everybody's copying me.
Right.
But like this technique is now like super well known, and for good reason, I think.
Yeah.
So now what I need to do is give this a background color, right? So
holy smokes, we've got like 2 minutes left.
All right, cool. I'm just going to quickly change the background color of this very quickly, and then I'll get to the last part of this, which is now we're in trouble. We don't have a very big image. All I need to do is select all of my layers here. I can drop the palette, but I can take all of this stuff and I can go Command T, and in my options up here in my transform tool, I've got, normally it's set to bicubic. I need to set it to nearest neighbor, and then I can effectively just go boost this up to whatever scale I want, hit return, and it'll preserve the resolution. If I don't do that, here's what happens. Nastiness. It just goes all like crunky and weird and horrible. So that's basically it. That's like when you're finished with your artwork, and make sure that you are finished with the artwork, because making any edits to it going forward, will be really tricky if you don't do it that way. But if you can do it that way, then you're finished, you're ready to print. It's at a high enough resolution to get printed. You just won't be able to make any pixel art edits to it because your pixels are now enormous. But that's it. that's the whole process.
Nice. That's awesome. Like the magic right at the end as well. So I hope you guys stuck. For those of you who did stick around to see the magic bit at the end, I always love that. It's like the last kind of 5 minutes. It's like all that work to just create like as many like colorful iterations as you want. But yeah, we will leave it at that. And thank you all for checking this out. This is like, I think the last one for Jeremy's stream. So Jeremy, thank you so much taking us through pixel art. That's just always incredible.
Always super fun.
Yeah, it's been a blast. But yeah, we will wrap up. Thank you everybody for watching. We'll be back soon with some more Adobe Live stuff. We've got some exciting things coming next month. So can't wait for that. Again, Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us. And we'll see you next time on Adobe Live.
See ya.